Jawadi to the stage, who will share his own experiences of Australia's recent policies towards asylum seekers. Mustafa is a Hazara from Afghanistan. He lives and works in Canberra, but spent 3 years of his childhood from the age of 10 in detention in Nauru and Christmas Island. Please welcome Mustafa Jawadi.
Thanks, Sophie. I would like to thank everyone for being here today. It's an honour to be here, to be at the front of everyone here, to share one of my story that lots of refugees share. My journey begins when I was 7 as a refugee. I left Afghanistan with my family. We flew to Iran to make a living. We couldn't live in Iran, so my dad decided to move to Australia. On our way to Australia, we flew from Iran to Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur. We stayed there for 2 nights, and the third night we had to catch a fishing boat to the border of Indonesia. That was a very, very scary boat. I remember the waters coming in from either side and my mum hugging me and saying, "Don't worry, you will get there." Thank you. Once we reached the border of Indonesia, we couldn't fly anywhere. They told us we could fly, but they tricked us onto buses for 4 days. We got on a bus all the way to Jakarta, the capital of Indonesia. We stayed there for 1 night. The next day, they got us on a different bus for 1 day, and they took us to Surabaya, one of the second largest cities in Indonesia. After that, after roughly 1 month, they came and told us we had to sail to Australia. We went to the shores of Indonesia. I remember this very, very carefully. They got us on these fishing canoes to take us to the boat. The women and children first. They got me and my mum on there, and my dad left behind. When we got on the big boat, they told us we have too many people on the boat. We have to start sailing. All the women who had their husbands back on the shore started crying. And finally, after a while, my dad showed up on the boat. We started sailing towards Australia. And the second night, we had a big storm. I remember everyone praying to God. Some people regretting. Waters coming in. After a few nights, the next day, we arrived in Australian waters, and the Navy caught up with us. They told us you are not welcome to Australia. All of a sudden, nowhere, I just saw this black smoke rise, and my dad just picked me up, put me on his shoulders because I couldn't breathe, and everyone was forced to jump out of the boat. After several hours with us in the water, the Navy picked us up. But it was too late. 1 elderly woman and 1 young woman with child died. I knew them very close. They were staying in the same house, but we were staying in Indonesia. After the Navy took us to Christmas Island, we were in Christmas Island for 2 months. After that, they tricked us into going to Nauru Detention Center by telling us, once you go there, you can contact your families back in Afghanistan. But once we got to Nauru, they did not provide us with any phones to contact our families. This went on for a few months until people had enough and they had a strike. They finally took us to a different detention center in Nauru, and there was other refugees in that detention center. Most were familiar, which we knew from Indonesia or back in Afghanistan. As a child in detention, I was not stressed as much. I was just busy playing with other kids, just being a kid. But I could see in my dad's eyes that he was stressed and he could not do anything about it. I could see he was regretting, as well as he just didn't know what to do. He looked worried. Then my mum gave birth to my little brother. That kind of changed our life in detention. It took our minds off being in detention, just put our minds towards my little brother. After 3 long years in detention, we got accepted to come to Australia as refugees on a temporary visa. We had to be on a temporary visa for 3 years. After that 3 years, they gave us permanent residency visas. After a year, in 2009, we got our citizenship in Australia. Australia is a really very, very nice country. I studied from year 8 all the way up to year 12, and I started working as a mechanic, and I'm a full qualified mechanic now. It's a shame to see kids or children in detentions. It's stopping them from studying, going to schools, and ruining their childhood. I don't have no idea what's the government thinking of giving out bridging visas to the new arrivals and keeping the children in detentions and not letting them work or study. I hope that they will come to their senses and change their minds. Thank you very much.